My family is in the worst mess. Brooke doesn't talk to us. She's had twins.
That was Linda Hogan revealing how she and Hulk have been completely cut off by their daughter, Brooke, just months after Brooke accused them of mental and physical abuse. Now, it's all in court. And Brooke's testimony is exposing just how deep the damage goes. Some of it directly connects to the circumstances surrounding Hulk Hogan's death. Let me break it down. Brooke's bombshell allegations, breaking the family's silence. In the annals of professional wrestling history, few families have been as publicly celebrated as the Hogans. For decades, they represented the American dream personified. A legendary wrestler, his beautiful wife, and their two talented children living what appeared to be a charmed existence under the bright lights of fame. But on March 27, 2025, that carefully constructed facade came crashing down in the most devastating way imaginable when Brooke Hogan, now 36 years old and a mother of newborn twins, made the courageous decision to shatter the silence that had protected her family's darkest secrets. For nearly 3 decades, Brooke detailed her reasons for cutting off contact with her parents, alleging extreme verbal and mental abuse since childhood that frequently turned physical. This wasn't a moment of impulsive anger, a cry for attention, or a typical celebrity family squabble designed to generate headlines and social media buzz. This was a methodical, carefully considered public statement that had been years in the making, representing the final act of a woman who had endured decades of alleged torment before finding the courage to speak her truth to a world that had idolized her father as a hero. The power and credibility of Brooke's revelations lies not just in their explosive nature, but in their heartbreaking specificity and the clinical precision with which she articulated her experiences. This wasn't a case of vague accusations, emotional outbursts, or the kind of rambling social media rants that often characterize celebrity meltdowns. Instead, Brooke's allegations included receiving berating and vile text messages, verbal public rayings with unbelievably hurtful words that impacted her self-esteem and confidence. The measured, almost therapeutic language suggests someone who had spent years processing trauma, working with mental health professionals, carefully documenting patterns of behavior, and finally reaching the point where silence was no longer an option for her own survival and well-being. These allegations gain even more credibility when we consider the testimony of an unexpected witness who had front row seats to the Hogan family dysfunction, Bubba, the love sponge Clem.
I saw Linda call Brooke fat and the C word, slap her across the face probably 4 or 5 times, kick her in the legs, just belittle her, pull her hair. Well, what caused all this? Nothing. What do you mean? Well, Brooke didn't seem to do anything. Brooke didn't spill her glass of Coca-Cola at the table during dinner. She wasn't talking back and being disrespectful. She was just being a kid, and that got her ass beat uncomfortably more than people would know.
His own controversial history with the family provided devastating corroboration of the abuse allegations during his divorce testimony. His account paints a picture of a household where violence against Brooke was not only common, but witnessed by multiple people over extended periods. This testimony is particularly damning because it describes abuse that was seemingly random and unprovoked, suggesting a pattern of violence that had nothing to do with Brooke's behavior and everything to do with her mother's psychological state and abusive tendencies. To truly understand the magnitude and significance of these allegations, we must consider the context of who Brooke Hogan was supposed to be in the public imagination, and how drastically different her reality apparently was from the carefully crafted image presented to the world. She was the beloved daughter featured prominently on the VH1 reality show Hogan Knows Best, which aired from 2005 to 2007, showcasing what appeared to be a loving, if somewhat overprotective, family dynamic where a caring father struggled with his daughter's growing independence while maintaining the kind of close-knit family bonds that millions of American families aspired to achieve. Viewers of Hogan Knows Best saw a teenage Brooke navigating typical adolescent challenges, dating, career aspiration, conflicts with parents while supported by parents who seemed genuinely devoted to her success and well-being. Hulk Hogan was portrayed as the stereotypical overprotective father, concerned about his daughter's romantic relationships and determined to shield her from the darker aspects of the entertainment industry. Linda Hogan appeared as the mediating maternal figure, helping to balance her husband's protectiveness with their daughter's need for independence and growth. But according to Brooke's recent revelations and the corroborating testimony from witnesses like Bubba Clem, this television portrayal was nothing more than an elaborate performance designed to hide a much darker reality that was playing out behind the cameras. The show that was supposed to demonstrate family values and healthy relationships was actually, according to Eric Bischoff, a former wrestling executive who noted on his 83 Weeks podcast that the show fueled and expedited the marriage's collapse by exposing private issues to public scrutiny, contributing to the very dysfunction it was meant to conceal. Brooke described being manipulated and lied to, and used as a pawn, with others benefiting financially from her suffering and embarrassment. Brooke noted being asked to defend poor behavior publicly, likely referencing past incidents like her father's racist rant, only to feel misinformed and manipulated. The most notable and devastating example occurred in 2015, when Hulk Hogan faced significant backlash after a leaked transcript from a 2007 sex.
He's not racist. I definitely would not want things that I say behind closed doors, and I'm sure you wouldn't, or anybody else watching. Nobody would want their lowest moment to be filmed and aired for the world to see.
Tape revealed him using racist language, including the N-word, while discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life. The leaked audio revealed Hogan expressing discomfort about his daughter dating a black man and making explicitly racist statements that shocked fans and destroyed his carefully crafted image as an all-American hero. At the time, Brooke publicly defended her father with what seemed like genuine conviction, appearing in interviews and making statements that portrayed his racist remarks as an aberration, rather than a reflection of his true character. Now, with the benefit of Brooke's new revelations and the perspective that comes from years of reflection and healing, we can see this defense in an entirely different and deeply troubling light. But as it would turn out, Hulk had his own demons, the many vices of Hulk Hogan behind the American hero facade. While Brooke Hogan's allegations of childhood abuse painted a disturbing picture of family dysfunction that shocked fans and observers worldwide, they represented only one facet of a much larger, more complex, and more deeply troubling story of personal destruction that had been unfolding behind closed doors for decades. Terry Gene Blee, the man behind the iconic Hulk Hogan persona, harbored numerous dark secrets and engaged in a pattern of destructive behaviors that would systematically destroy not only his family relationships, but also his health, reputation, and the legacy he had spent decades building. Perhaps the most physically destructive and personally devastating of Hogan's vices.
I was on the pain pills. I did have doctors just writing prescriptions after prescriptions, and all of a sudden it becomes this vicious cycle. As they were giving me the pain meds, I was in crazy pain. I couldn't even function. But as soon as things started to wind down, they would keep giving me the pain meds. It got to a point where when I had the 10th back surgery, the pharmacy would call me, "Your prescription's ready."
Was his long-standing, deeply entrenched addiction to prescription painkillers, a dependency that grew directly from the brutal physical toll.
I would go like a dog chasing a bone. I'd go pick it up. And then finally, I just looked at myself and I said, "I'm not in pain. I don't need this. My body hurts from all the wrestling injuries, but I'm not in this excruciating pain that I can't live with. I can live with this, the amount of pain I have."
That decades of professional wrestling had taken on his body. The man who had entertained millions with his larger-than-life persona and seemingly superhuman strength was behind the scenes, trapped in a cycle of chronic pain and substance abuse that would affect every aspect of his life and relationships. In a resurfaced interview that provides chilling insight into the depth of his addiction, Hogan himself described the vicious cycle that had consumed years of his life and undoubtedly affected his ability to be a present, stable father during his children's most formative years. Hogan's relationship with alcohol was equally destructive, long-standing, and deeply problematic, representing another layer of substance abuse that compounded the effects of his prescription drug dependency. During his wrestling career, he would consume up to 12 beers after a match to cope with physical pain and the demands of his profession. This level of alcohol consumption goes far beyond casual drinking, social consumption, or even stress relief. It represents a serious substance abuse problem that would have significantly affected his ability to function as a father, husband, and role model during the most important years of his children's lives. The combination of heavy drinking and the immense stress of maintaining his high-profile career, managing his public image, and dealing with the constant pressures of fame created a perfect storm for poor decision-making, impaired judgment, and destructive behavior that would have profound consequences for his family. This heavy drinking contributed to health issues, including bloating and nightly junk food binges, which affected his overall well-being. But the physical effects were likely secondary to the psychological and behavioral impacts that chronic alcohol abuse would have had on his parenting abilities, his emotional stability, and his capacity for healthy family relationships. The timeline of Hogan's alcohol abuse is particularly significant when we consider Brooke's allegations of childhood abuse. It wasn't until January 2023 that Hogan made the pivotal decision to quit drinking after attending a New Year's Eve party where he observed behaviors he did not condone. This means that for the majority of Brooke's childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood, the most formative and crucial years of her development, her father was struggling with active alcohol addiction, which would have profoundly affected his parenting abilities, his emotional availability, his judgment, and his capacity for providing the stable, nurturing environment that children need to thrive. But Hogan's vices extended far beyond substance abuse into areas that would prove even more damaging to his family relationships, his public reputation, and his moral standing in the eyes of those who had once looked up to him as a hero. The 2015 scandal that temporarily destroyed his career and permanently tarnished his legacy involved more than just private mistakes or momentary lapses in judgment. It revealed a deeply troubling worldview and character flaws that contradicted everything his public persona represented. The leaked transcript from a 2007 sex tape revealed him using racist language, including the N-word, while discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life, expressing discomfort about her dating a black man. These weren't words spoken in anger, heat of the moment expressions, or statements taken out of context. They were calm, deliberate expressions of racist beliefs that revealed the true character of a man who had built his career on representing American values. The implications of this racist rant go far beyond the immediate damage to his career and public image. This conversation took place in 2007 when Brooke was 19 years old and presumably dating, or considering dating. Imagine being a young woman and learning that your father not only disapproved of your romantic choices based purely on race, but that he held such deeply prejudiced, hateful views about an entire group of people. The psychological impact of discovering that one's parent harbors such hatred, prejudice, and moral ugliness would be devastating and would fundamentally alter the parent-child relationship in ways that might never be repaired. The consequences were swift, severe, and comprehensive. WWE terminated Hogan's contract and removed all references to him from their website, including his Hall of Fame profile. Companies like Mattel stopped producing Hogan action figures, and major retailers like Target, Toys R Us, and Walmart removed his merchandise from their stores. The scandal led to widespread criticism from wrestling colleagues, fans, and civil rights organizations, permanently tarnishing his legacy and destroying the carefully crafted image he had spent decades building. The sex tape scandal itself reveals another deeply troubling aspect of Hogan's character: moral compass and capacity for betrayal. In 2006, Hogan had a sexual encounter with Heather Clem, the wife of his friend Bubba, the love sponge Clem, which was secretly recorded, while Hogan claimed he was unaware of the recording. The fact remains that he was having an affair with his friend's wife, representing a profound betrayal of trust, friendship, and basic moral decency. This pattern of infidelity, betrayal, and moral failure extended throughout his personal relationships, including his marriage with Linda Hogan. Linda accused Hulk of having an affair with Christiane Plant, a close friend of their daughter Brooke, which was later confirmed by Plant herself in a 2008 National Enquirer interview. The fact that Hogan would engage in an affair with someone so intimately connected to his family, someone his daughter trusted, confided in, and considered a friend, demonstrates a callous disregard for the emotional well-being of his loved ones, and a willingness to sacrifice family relationships for his own gratification. Linda's allegations went far beyond infidelity to include claims of physical and emotional abuse that paint a picture of domestic violence and psychological terrorism. In her 2011 memoir, Wrestling the Hulk: My Life Against the Ropes, Linda alleged that Hulk tore her shirt, threw lamps, held her down with hands around her throat, slammed doors, and pounded walls, causing her to fear for her life. These allegations describe a pattern of behavior characterized by violence, intimidation, and psychological abuse that would create an atmosphere of fear and chaos in the family home. In a 2016 Inside Edition interview, Linda stated her fear for her life during his rages. This statement reveals the level of terror and psychological trauma that Linda experienced during their marriage, and it provides crucial context for understanding the environment in which Brooke and her brother Nick were raised. Children who grow up in homes marked by domestic violence often suffer lasting psychological trauma even when they aren't the direct targets. In the case of Hulk Hogan, the steroid allegations that surfaced in the early 90s added yet another layer to the complex portrait of a man whose personal struggles were often entangled with a pattern of dishonesty. Hogan initially denied using steroids, famously claiming on a popular talk show that his massive frame was the result of natural training. But those claims crumbled during Vince McMahon's federal trial, when Hogan admitted that steroid use was widespread in the wrestling industry during the 80s. His public denials, followed by legal admissions under immunity, revealed a pattern of deception that would haunt many of his public statements over the years. As the family unraveled, Linda Hogan emerged with her own shocking revelations that would amplify the destruction. Just as the public was still digesting Brooke's devastating allegations about her upbringing, it became clear that the toxicity within the Hogan household ran even deeper than anyone had imagined. Linda, Hulk's ex-wife and Brooke's mother, offered disturbing insights into the man behind the legend, while simultaneously exposing her own troubling behavior toward their daughter. What made Linda's statement so shocking wasn't just what she said about Hulk. It was how she reacted to Brooke's desperate cries for help, acknowledgement, and validation. When Brooke courageously came forward with her allegations of systematic childhood abuse, Linda's response wasn't one of maternal concern. Instead, it was swift, vicious, and entirely devoid of empathy, rather than expressing curiosity, concern, or even a desire to understand. Linda lashed out with a public counterattack that was as strategically cruel as it was emotionally damaging. She used social media to label Brooke a narcissist, claiming her daughter was just like her father. She dismissed the abuse allegations, admitting only to spanking and name-calling, downplaying her actions as if they were insignificant. This kind of minimizing, blame-shifting, and gaslighting is commonly described by abuse survivors and echoed precisely what Brooke had alleged. But Linda didn't stop there. She went on to accuse Brooke of drunken violence, alleging that her daughter broke her own collarbone and demanded hospital treatment for supposed poisoning, claims that appeared carefully designed to paint Brooke as unstable, reckless, and unreliable. The timing of these accusations, immediately following Brooke's revelations, raised serious doubts about their credibility and cast Linda in a deeply troubling light. Even more shocking was Linda's threat of legal action against her daughter. Rather than seek resolution, reconciliation, or healing, she declared she would defend herself in court if Brooke continued speaking out. This combative, adversarial approach said everything about the toxic family dynamics Brooke described. A caring parent might have responded with concern, remorse, or at the very least a desire to understand. Linda's immediate resort to legal threats underscored the deep dysfunction that had plagued the family for years. However, the most explosive and damaging claims Linda made weren't about Brooke, they were about Hulk. She publicly accused him of being a compulsive liar and a sex addict. These weren't vague insults, they aligned with a long trail of past accusations, court records, and deeply troubling behavior spanning decades. Linda's earlier memoir included explicit accounts of Hulk's infidelities and destructive behavior during their marriage. While she didn't use the term sex addict at the time, her detailed description strongly suggested a pattern of compulsive sexual behavior far beyond normal marital issues. Her claim that Hulk was a complete liar echoed the well-documented history of his dishonest public statements, whether about steroid use, racist remarks, or domestic abuse allegations. Perhaps most heartbreaking were Linda's emotional posts, describing the family as being in its worst state more than a decade after their divorce. Rather than healing over time, the dysfunction seemed to have festered, continuing to poison family bonds, traumatize the children, and perpetuate emotional wounds. Despite her cruel response to Brooke's allegations, Linda often made contradictory statements. She acknowledged that Hulk spent millions supporting Brooke's music career, and even praised him as a good father, though she maintained he was a terrible husband. This mix of praise and condemnation, affection and anger, is textbook dysfunction and unstable emotional climate that confuses children and leaves lasting scars. When parents send conflicting messages about love, trust, and behavior, children are left unsure of what to believe, how to feel safe, or how to build healthy relationships. The financial aspect of Linda's response made matters worse. She framed her financial support for Brooke's career as proof of love, implying that money spent compensated for any emotional harm. This kind of manipulation, equating money with love, is a damaging message. It suggests that children should Be grateful for financial support, even if it comes with emotional neglect or abuse. Brooke's feelings of being treated like a commodity and investment rather than a daughter were only reinforced by this attitude. The divorce settlement further revealed the deep-rooted dysfunction. Linda received the majority of the couple's assets as well as a stake in Hulk's companies. The disproportionate split hinted at the court's belief in the seriousness of her claims about infidelity, abuse, and misconduct during the marriage. Years after the divorce, Hulk continued to resist fulfilling legal obligations, including payments from a massive lawsuit victory. A judge ruled that he had deliberately obstructed Linda's access to funds she was entitled to, reinforcing the pattern of vindictiveness, spite, and control that seemed to define his post-marriage behavior. This hostile, ongoing legal battle made healthy co-parenting impossible and left Brooke and her brother navigating a war zone of resentment and blame. Long after their parents had split, Hulk's reaction to Brooke's abuse allegations was perhaps the most psychologically damaging of all. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Instead of addressing Brooke's claims, he posted a video with his new wife, casually eating popcorn and making light of the situation. The caption joked about rebooting their old reality show, as if the entire family breakdown were just a punchline. This trivialized Brooke's pain, reducing her trauma to entertainment value for social media followers. That he would mock the very show that may have contributed to the family's dysfunction, forcing the children to perform happiness on camera, while allegedly suffering off-screen, revealed a staggering lack of empathy. Around the same time, Linda posted tearful videos expressing confusion and heartbreak about her daughter cutting off contact, seemingly oblivious to how her own cruel actions had driven that decision. What's clear is that no adult in the Hogan household has ever taken real responsibility. The same patterns of denial, blame, and cruelty have repeated for decades, causing generational trauma that no one has properly addressed. The story reached a tragic and final note with the death of Hulk Hogan from cardiac arrest. His passing came just months after Brooke's public statements and Linda's renewed accusations, closing the door on any chance of healing, reconciliation, or redemption. And that brings us to the end of this story. For more deep dives into complex public scandals and family drama, click the videos on your screen.